Welcome all. It is 5 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started with this meeting. I'm calling to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission for Monday, February 19th, 2024. I'd like to welcome everybody here, and I'm so happy to see my colleagues again, just with a little break after we spent the day together on Saturday. First order of business, roll call.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. Any communications, Manager Wisma?
Yeah, one item. There are forms out there with a QR code. We're seeking input from our community on barriers to engagement. So if you scan the QR code, that'll get you to the survey and we ask that you complete that, and we'll be using that information to help our engagements going forward. And the survey will be open until March 1st, Friday. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you, Manager Wisma. Now is the opportunity on our agenda for the Committee of the Whole meeting for public comments. So just a reminder, there's also an opportunity at our business meeting that starts at 7 for public comments as well. But for this Committee of the Whole meeting, public comments are limited to 2 minutes rather than 3 minutes at our regular business meeting. And if you have something you would like to provide your thoughts about to the commission here, please come forward. You'll have, once again, 2 minutes, and let us know whether you live in the city. Thank you.
Dedicated service to the community, and thank you for letting me speak to you. I only have 2 minutes. We all know, and you will agree, we have an epidemic of speeding in Kalamazoo. If you drive the speed limit, you'll be passed left and right, and sometimes in the left turn lane. We also have, how can I say, less of a police presence than I remember in the past. And I was able to speak to a couple of commissioners, and I was told that the reason we don't have more presence is because police officers are leaving their line of work and go to a different career. And also, police academies don't have enough qualified candidates to train them for police. I'm here to that sounds, to encourage you to install those cameras at intersections and red lights. I come from the old world, and they do it, and I think in the new world we should be able to do the same thing. And it's a very effective way of catching speedsters. The fine can be heavy, and I think the more important thing is it's a deterrent. It's as though there's a police car parked right by the intersection. It's hardly visible, but if you go through it, you get a letter in the mail that you don't like, and you pay a heavy fine. And the other thing, my suggestion has also got to do with streets. Neither Portage or Kalamazoo has a single street that bears the name of an American artist or composer. Not a single street. We have all kinds of names. We have a Shakespeare Street downtown, but that's because of a paper company that's out of business now. So I think I was an English major at the University of Bonn in Germany, and I love the American authors, and one reason I'm here is because it opposite my view of the United States. So you cannot rename streets. When there's a new division bill, if you consider names like Baldwin, Steinbeck, Naylor, Tennessee Williams, Morrison, and so on. We need to pay tribute to people. We have very educated city with two universities, and so even if that was not the case, that's my
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
30 seconds?
No, then we'd have to allow everyone to have extra time if they need it. We do have a business meeting to get to also, but your points are well taken. I appreciate hearing that. Anyone else wants to make comments? And just a reminder that if you want your name to be recognized, you can sign your name here over on the podium before or after you speak. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jeff Letka. I'm a downtown resident. I'm here with other downtown residents and represent a lot who I've talked to in the past few days. I'm here with regards to the Arcadia site and the funding of the Arcadia site. I've written a statement. I can talk fast. Many like me, look to the city and county government to provide a clean and safe downtown environment for everyone to enjoy. I've read the flyers and social media posts put out by activist groups who oppose funding of this project and only agree with them on two things. We do have a homeless problem that's only getting worse downtown, and the Arcadia space should be developed and available to anybody in Kalamazoo. To that second point, I argue that Arcadia is currently not available to everyone. Over the last 5 years, I've watched it decline to a dirty and unsafe area that most citizens walk around rather than through. This is not a secret. All of you have heard this from many sources before. As things are today, the entire space is being provided for and maintained for only one small group of people who seem to not only be mostly immune to the enforcement of local laws and statutes, but who actively vandalize the property, which is much of the reason it's in such drastic need of repair. Does it make sense to pour so much planning and money into this area without accounting for the likelihood that it will again be subject to the same treatment? This is not about whether the homeless population will be displaced, as some have suggested, but about making a large city safe and accessible for all of Kalamazoo residents, not just a few. The groups arguing against this funding continue to disregard the 8-figure sum that's already spent annually, or the 8 facilities that already exist to help this population here. The Arcadia site development should not be influenced by groups who somehow consider it to be part of that community's domain just because of its location, its proximity to the mission, or because they demand the funds be spent elsewhere. I urge the committee to be moving forward with the development with any funds necessary, with a clear plan for safety and security, including enforced park hours and strategic fencing, making it safe and accessible for the entire Kalamazoo community for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the chambers that wants to make a comment for the committee of the whole?
Hello. My name is Remy Harrington, and I am the administrator and co-founder of the Zoo City Farm and Food Network. I wanted to come here today in person and thank Commissioner Decker for coming to our State of the Food address that we had last month. And just to acknowledge that we exist in Kalamazoo. I have had several layers of communications with the City Commission about our infrastructure development in the Edison neighborhood, and I just wanted to make you all aware that we have a food sovereignty initiative that we have spent quite a bit of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears developing here in this community. I want to be really clear about what food sovereignty is. You can't develop an equitable food system on behalf of someone else. The way of integrity is for us to acknowledge existing food sovereignty initiatives that are happening by leveraging the tools of the democracy of the people to develop food systems on their own behalf. La Via Campesina has a definition, I have 50 seconds, that is a widely circulated and used definition for food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through sustainable methods and their right to define their own food and agricultural systems. I've become privy to some initiatives that are happening in our community that are calling themselves food sovereignty initiatives, and they are not food sovereignty initiatives. You cannot, through a white dominant entity, develop a food sovereignty initiative on behalf of someone. I just need to make that very clear. I need to be on record saying that. The way of integrity, again, is to acknowledge the existing food systems that are happening in this community where people are developing those tools and those pathways and foodways on behalf of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to make a comment for the committee of the whole meeting? Thank you to those who took the time, made the effort to come down here and make a comment. Just a reminder, there's also opportunity at our business meeting at 7 o'clock. Next, on to the work of the committee of the whole. Manager Ritzma.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We have a work session this evening It's on greenhouse gases inventory, and it's a presentation by our Sustainability Director or Development Coordinator, Jamie McCarthy, and Justin Gish, our Sustainability Coordinator. And you want to come forward and give your presentation. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you.
Well, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, and Commissioners, thank you for giving us some time on your agenda this evening. I'm happy to be here and very pleased to introduce my coworker, Mr. Justin Gish. He is the newest member of our Planning Division in Community Planning and Economic Development and is our first-time sustainability planner at the City of Kalamazoo. So very excited to introduce him and have him in front of you for the first time, talking about something that's complementary to the city's community sustainability plan. In front of you, you have a report. It's the first time we've put together report with 2022 data in front of you, and it talks about and summarizes and accounts for the greenhouse gases that are emitted by City of Kalamazoo operations and assets. And then you're going to see and hear this evening, but you'll see a separate report coming out. We'll make sure you get a copy that accounts for the same type of emissions across the city. So all of those emissions that are coming from within the city boundaries. So those aren't just city-owned or municipal-owned assets. You know, it's everything throughout the City of Kalamazoo, all of our residents and businesses, everything collectively. So it's a much bigger number, and you're going to hear about that this evening. But tonight we really wanted to focus on what this body, what the city owns, and what our operations emit, and that's really a great baseline for us to be thinking about as we work toward becoming carbon neutral by 2050, right? We have this baseline now that will be coming forward and tracking and reporting each year and making this sort of strategy and steady progress towards zero over the coming decades. So we're really excited to get in front of you and show you these numbers and then be, making progress and reducing those year after year. So just 1 minute here. I wanted to mention a little bit more about what Justin does for the city and within our department. As I mentioned, he's our sustainability planner. Since he was hired mid-2023, he's been working a lot across our departments, right? Really bringing them together and working on some initiatives. His role is really thinking about how we are working, and you're going to see today how sustainability really stretches out across all of our departments. New in 2024, he's now liaison to our Environmental Concerns Committee, and so that's a new role that he's taking on, and that committee's really getting connected to and helping work with our staff on our sustainability plan. So that's new for the ECC this year. So I'll let Justin come up here and talk to you about the numbers.
Welcome, Mr. Gish.
Hello, thank you. All right, so in 2019, the commission here declared a climate emergency that spurred the creation of a community sustainability plan, and in that plan called for net zero carbon emissions for the city by 2050. If we're going to get to net zero, we got to know where we're at. So this is an initial attempt to figure out where we're at in the city. Worked with consumers, with public services here in the city to collect this data, and now that we have this data, we can use it to help us make decisions. And then every year I'll report on the city's greenhouse gas emissions. So this will be an annual plan, or annual report. I don't think I'll come here every year, but it'll be available to you. So initially, I started in 2023. I had 1 year of good data. So this is all 2022 data. It's 2024 now. I'll be working on the 2023 report soon. So here's the numbers. For the City of Kalamazoo, the municipal operations here, what we measured, it's 50,053 metric tons of CO2e. CO2e is carbon dioxide equivalent, so there's three main greenhouse gases: methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide. CO2e is a standardization of those three, because each one of those gases has different potential for warming. But CO2e is a standardization. It's kind of how you measure those three together as one. About 50%, 49% is just energy use related to water and wastewater. So that's just pushing water out to people, and bringing it back and cleaning it. Second highest sector here in the city is solid waste facilities. And included in that solid waste is biosolids. So that's the kind of result of the wastewater process. It ends up going into landfill. The way we classify it, it goes as solid waste. You could easily kind of include that in water and wastewater treatment process. That would move that number to 76%. So I just want to illustrate that that is a big chunk of our emissions here at the city. Coming up next is buildings and facilities. It's just keeping the lights on here and keeping people comfortable in their offices. That's 12% of all emissions here in the city, or for the city. And then street lights and traffic signals are 5% each. We'll go into these categories here pretty quickly because I know we're on a crunch here. So this is what I was talking about with the waste. So there's biosolids. Oh, yeah, you hit the screen there. There's biosolids. 97% of CO2 emissions from the city and solid waste is just resulting from biosolids. Small percentage for leaf composting, and then a small percentage there for getting rid of arborist waste. As far as gasoline and diesel use goes, you can see it's predominantly gasoline use, 66% compared to 34% there for diesel use. This will change in the next report. Public Service has switched over to biodiesel, which has a better carbon footprint there. So in the 2023 report, we should see a change there, assuming that use stays the same. Buildings and facilities, electricity is 45% of all emissions, and natural gas is 55%. This one's interesting. The natural gas tends to be lower, but there's a site, the sidewalks downtown use a bit of natural gas there, so that bumps that sector up. Then you have traffic signals and street lights. Not a lot you can do about those for now, but we're working on that. But you can see street lights predominate. They're 65% with 35% for traffic signals. So it's helpful to have a comparison. Everyone wants to compare us to other cities. We can't compare us to Ann Arbor yet because they don't release these internal numbers. But if you look here, the closest is probably South Bend, which is 42,000. So, Kalamazoo's not, I wouldn't say these numbers are good or bad, but you're kind of in line with other cities. And that's not a typo for East Lansing. They also do a lot of wastewater treatment, which is why they're 10 times what we are. But there you go. So that's the city of Kalamazoo. I'll breeze through the community. So everything in the city boundaries, then I'll be available for questions. All right, so the Kalamazoo community, everything inside the boundaries here of Kalamazoo, we're at 2,118,931 metric tons of CO2e in 2022, predominantly energy use, so that's natural gas and electricity use here in the city. That follows up with transportation, which is 12%, solid waste, 2%, and then energy production, which is Western Michigan's power plant there at 3%. So that's how the broader community looks there. And then how does that compare? Everyone wants to compare everyone else to Ann Arbor. They're kind of the lodestar here in Michigan. We're right around where Ann Arbor is. South Bend's a little bit lower. Seattle's a lot lower. We'll talk about why here in a minute. Lansing's kind of where it's at. And the United States is sixth. They have a problem with billions here. I guess it's too big of a number. So 6,340 million metric tons. All right, so if you break it down a little bit, you can see Ann Arbor there all the way on the left. And you can see trends here. So it tends to be energy use is high, followed by transportation and then waste. Except Seattle bucks the trend there. That's because Seattle, about half of Seattle's energy comes from hydroelectric. So there's no carbon emissions there. So that's why their numbers are a little bit lower. If they had a similar energy grid to us, it'd probably be above the transportation as well. But it's helpful to compare Kalamazoo to Ann Arbor, if only to show why the comparison isn't great. So if you look at Ann Arbor's numbers, they're a little bit lower in commercial, they're higher in residential, but they have no industry, or report no industry in their report. And Kalamazoo's, off the charts would be an exaggeration, but you can see there the industrial energy use here in Kalamazoo is very high. We're just a very industrial city. And then institutional, that's Western's power plant compared to what U of M reports that they emit. So it's helpful to keep that in mind as you kind of look at numbers, try to compare Kalamazoo to anywhere else. We're very unique with that industrial piece there. And that's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions or any concerns you might have.
Questions, commissioners? Vice Mayor?
Thank you for that, Justin. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming up to lead the ECC and use them to the greater benefit of the Kalamazoo community. So the streetlights, I mean, it's not the biggest source of emissions but what if all streetlights were LED? And I know we're working toward that, but like, would that change that metric at all?
That would lower it, I'm sure. I wouldn't know by how much, but yeah.
And Consumers is working with us on that.
I believe so, yeah.
And at this point, I did have a conversation with somebody who's like, my street is so dark. Well, if your streetlights are out, the replacement streetlight is an LED light. And so I think we just have to report those to consumers, or do we report those to 311?
It's a good question. I wouldn't hurt to report 311. I couldn't say. I would punt that. I know Director Baker's in the back, and he's probably shaking his head right now, but I don't have the answer.
He just gave us a thumbs up.
All right, 311 it is.
311 it is. So if your streetlights are out, call 311.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Pradle?
Justin, thanks for being here.
You bet.
So I just, when I saw that pie chart, that first one where it's showing water and wastewater treatment and solid waste facilities basically comprising 75% of all of emissions, that's incredible. I mean, that's...
There's a caveat, let me jump in there. So I'm giving you all the abbreviated report. In my bigger presentation, I point out that that's high because Kalamazoo treats essentially the entire county's water. Yeah. So Kalamazoo carries the carbon burden for the entire county, essentially.
Very good point. Good point. Yeah, so 250,000 people's water, wastewater. Question I had for you is on the solid waste facilities. Does that comprise also with the transporting of waste, I guess, if that makes sense? Is that included in that portion, or would that be included more in like the vehicle fleet portion?
That's a tricky one. So that number wouldn't be included in the city's report. That would be reflected in the transportation data for the community. So the way I collected the community data, it's through Google Insight Environmental Explorer, which just tracks everyone's driving here in the city. So trucks going to and from the wastewater treatment plant to the landfill there would be included in that data. So this one is just the biosolids going into the landfill and creating methane. It's nothing to do with the trucks. The trucks would add a considerable amount, and I could look at that. It's a more narrow focus, but I'm happy to give you a number on that too.
As we're comparing, year over year, so you mentioned that this is actually 2022 data.
Yep.
Are there any factors that could potentially skew our progress? So I guess an example would be like extreme weather instances. It might be very difficult to see if we're making progress on something if all of a sudden we have a very mild year, but then all of a sudden it was a very like polar vortex year or an extreme heat situation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, not to give myself job security. That's why it's important to do this work every year so you can get those trends. I asked for historical data from consumers going back 10 years. So hopefully I can get that and try to look, see if I see any trends. It's also important to know where we were. So 2022, we have one point in time. So with that historical data, I can see if we were below the 50 or above the 50, and then I can try to figure out a kind of a path to net zero. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is all dependent, especially with the gas use. This year probably won't be too high, but yeah, if we have a very cold winter, that'll jump up.
And
for sure.
Not to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine.
And I know you haven't been here a very long time.
Yeah.
But in my short interaction here with you, I can tell that this is something that you kind of eat, live, and breathe.
Oh, this is
it's your
fun.
life. Yeah. Question for you in terms of just, thinking about progress that we can make.
Yeah.
Again, this is just generalizing. I'm not asking for like concrete, 500-step plan to reduce carbon emissions in the city. But in terms of like the greatest impact, lowest resource opportunities to make progress right away, where do you see the greatest opportunities?
Well, again, so I like to take credit for a lot of these things because they happened under my tenure, but they were kicked off by Director Baker and his team before that. So the combustion of woody debris, 167 metric tons is gone. So that process is no longer, they're no longer using that process to get rid of that woody debris, so that 167% is gone. The biodiesel, that's going to drop the diesel emissions there. And then the rest of it, we have to just kind of figure out a way to use maybe some of these federal money that's out there to get more renewable solar panels, things like that on our buildings. Also, you have to look at efficiency. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put a solar panel on a building if it's not efficient, because then you're just sending that energy or heat, straight out into the world. So looking at efficiency in buildings. And again, some of the stuff is not really out of our control, but it's more difficult with the streetlights and traffic signals. And then with wastewater and wastewater treatment, that's not something that you're going to want to live without or really want to toy with too much. So yeah, my focus right now is buildings and facilities, especially as we transition to Crosstown Parkway, trying to figure out ways to make that building more efficient, because that is that's the highest energy use building outside of wastewater as far as city municipal operations go. Second is this one. It makes sense, they're the biggest buildings, but yeah, so trying to figure out what we can do in Crosstown and take that number down a little bit.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you
it.
bet.
Thank you,
Commissioner,
Mayor.
yes.
Thank you, Justin, for being here.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So we have on our business agenda today is to approve a grant from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. How do you feel that once that's in place within the city and at Public Works, how that's going to change some of these numbers? You think it's going to make a drastic change? Maybe just a small dent?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that program. Is that one that you're familiar with, Jamie? Or what that grant is?
It's the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. It's a pilot for the phase of EV charging infrastructure for the city facilities.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah, okay. So EV, yeah. That will probably lower some, but the problem is, again, so when you're charging those electric vehicles, they're coming from the grid. I don't want to say the grid is dirty, but the grid's still fueled by natural gas. So when you see kind of national numbers, like EVs are better, even if you're charging them from a quote-unquote dirty grid or a grid with fossil fuels. But if you have a more renewable grid, you could do a little bit better. And my understanding is that some of those EV charging stations are going to go in Crosstown Parkway, where we're trying to put solar panels. So if we can couple those two together, we'll see a better drop. So we'll see a drop. It could be more significant depending on other choices that we make.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning the solar panels, because I was also going to ask, are you guys going to be installing solar panels to help offset the cost of that energy that the city fleets will be using? All right, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Other questions at this time? Thank you so much. It's nice to have you here. And I have a feeling you probably will be asked to come back and make your report.
That's fine.
Every year, yeah. So
if you
won't be remote.
If you want to hear it, I'll be happy to say it.
Yeah. So one thing that's just interesting to me is the things that we do that are separate activities and maybe not totally, promote one of our goals while we're promoting another one of our goals. And I know that we can be more directive with our city-owned property, for sure. But when we talk about the entire city of Kalamazoo, at the same time, we have things going on where we're supporting economic development. For example, we're past the PA 198 resolution for Zoetis to expand. So that means that while we're supporting, job creation and economic development and supporting our tax base, that will be a countervailing to our efforts for the entire city to see a reduction. In addition, of course, and I know that each one of these will be a very much smaller contributor, but creating housing, for example, and there will be results of all that kind of development as well. So when you think about that idea and how we manage those things and how those kinds of investments, actually will have and will be a measurable effect on our greater efforts. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just go back. So with sustainability, that there's three pillars, the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit. So when you think in sustainability, you do try to keep those considerations in mind that we could get to net zero, but no one would live in the city and there'd be nothing to be done in the city, right? So you look at, the arena that could come in. It'd be fun to do this analysis. Maybe I'll start working on this or some type. So with the arena, my understanding is that that housing, so whatever's happening at Wing Stadium is going to happen at this arena. Whatever is going to happen at Lawson is going to happen at this arena, and the Reed Fieldhouse. So you essentially have 4 buildings, and you create one building, and those 4 buildings are going to be, probably torn down, so you'll have one building. So, I guess you would assume that having 4 buildings doing 4 separate things would be less efficient than one building doing, all of those things. So I don't know. Not a great answer to your question, but no, you do consider profit and people and the well-being, because you want to create a community that's sustainable with jobs and, in harmony with the environment, not to get too hippie or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's part of my job and I'm working on it, I guess. There, Commissioner Hess is laughing at me, but I fumbled that one, but, okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. Commissioner Decker?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one more question for you, Justin. As you're starting to work, within our sustainability plan, have you ever thought or looked into you and your team community solar and putting those together and how we could start to incorporate that within the city and the vacant lots that we have?
Oh boy, all right, so this is the last question. Yes, community solar, and the bigger presentation, I have a slide about community solar. So it's working through legislature now. If it passes as it is now, it will allow for 5 megawatt production. 5 megawatt production is going to be about 30 to 40 acres. So trying to site that within the city is tough. So just for an example, Western's Western Solar Garden there off 131 is 8.5 acres and produces 1 megawatt of energy. So the scale might not be there. Working with Taylor at the county, there's more land outside the city limits. So yes, I think community solar can help. Finding a spot for it, that's the $1 million question, I guess. But yeah, I know. I was bummed when I found it out too. Sorry.
Thank you for that. I know, Jamie, you had mentioned something like that to you, and I'm still going to ask the question.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Manager Rissma?
That concludes our work session this evening.
All right, well, thank you so much. Now is an opportunity for commissioner comments for the committee of the whole. Are there any commissioner comments? Just a reminder for anyone who's here, there is an opportunity for commissioner comments at tonight's business meeting as well, which commissioners generally do take advantage of. We also have now, next on our agenda, a closed session, and we need to have a motion to go into closed session. And will we be coming back into our public session, or will we be adjourning, Attorney Leal?
We will be adjourning.
Okay. So can I have a motion to go into closed session to discuss an attorney-client privileged communication?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Hess, supported by Commissioner Hoffman. Any discussion? Clerk Berling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Decker? Yes. Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hess?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion is approved. Hope to see everyone at our business meeting at 7, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Third floor.
Yes.